Welcome to the TryPod. It's the 2023 NRL Finals Preview Extravaganza. We've just done the Week 1 Finals Preview, which was game-by-game breakdown. I was joined by Clarkey, but we're straight back into it again. I've got some very special guests to introduce to you. First of all, Jimmy Smith. You may know him from SEN. He's on the air 12 till 3 every single weekday. In addition to joining our great friend of the show, Tristan Merlihan, on Market Watch, which is a weekly NRL preview, along with some other sports and racing. He's an incredibly busy man. So, Jimmy, thank you for making the time to join us on the TryPod.
Hey, Jacob, appreciate it. Thank you, mate. Looking forward to it tonight, too, doing a deep dive into these games. What a great final series we've got set up for the NRL as well. Can't wait.
Cannot wait, absolutely. And really appreciate you being here. And then Nakul, our followers know well, too, helping sports fans find an edge with data-driven insights, and going to give us your thoughts on the upcoming matchups, Nakul, as well as the overarching finals markets that we're going to sink our teeth into. But before we go kind of game by game, sorry, I cut you off. I didn't even let you reply there, Nakul. How you doing?
I was just going to say I'm very excited to be here. We've got Jimmy, who's on radio every day, and me, who's got a head for radio. So perfect balance.
I'm right there with you. You know, the TryPod was never intended to be video. It was always audio, but I don't know, some reason people wanted to watch it, and my face ended up on it. I wanted to do some reflections on the year that's been the regular season. So I throw to you guys, you know, it could be who you think wins Dally M, or it could just be your favorite player to watch this year. I was going to ask, let's go around the table. Player of the year. Did you want to kick us off, Nakul?
Yeah, we'll do. I'm going to go Reece Walsh. I think, I'm one for really inconsistent players, or players who show a lot of potential. And I reckon if you watch Reece Walsh the last couple of years, he showed a lot of potential. But this year, he's coming to that Brisbane system. He's obviously hit the ground running. And I think what was most impressive is that he didn't miss a beat when it came to State of Origin as well. And it's going to be really, really exciting to watch him take on the final series.
How about you, Jimmy?
Since when did Brisbane have a system? You know, that's a new thing, isn't it? I love that. Kevin Walters will be loving that, Nakul. All right, I'm going to nominate 3, if that's all right, Jacob. And I think the winner will be determined by how their team finishes up throughout the course of this final series. So, first nomination, Shaun Johnson. I don't think there's any doubt that the last 2 years of Shaun's career, he wanted to play in a dinner suit. He just... You know, there was a great saying that Gus Gould used to talk about with certain players. He'd say he's lost all desire for physical contact. Well, I think that was the case for Shaun. And then to better understand that, you learn about all the stuff that was happening off the field for him, away from the family. I hadn't seen them for so long, and was talking to Kev Campion the other day, and he said, I spoke to Shaun and said, mate, just give it one more year. Try and leave a legacy for these young guys over there in New Zealand. And he's come out this year and he's had a career best year. So, I take my hat off to Shaun Johnson. More try assists than he's ever had, which is extraordinary. I mean, he's still got this athleticism, so there's no real concern around that. He's only 32 when you think about Ben Hunt and Daly Cherry Evans. So, if he can take the Warriors into a prelim or even better, then he's player of the year. The other one is Reece Walsh, for all the things that Nakul mentioned. But, you know, he was a guy that you watched him for a half a game in his first game for the Warriors against the Melbourne Storm, and you just went, wow. But the bigger the stage, the better he goes. And that means he could set alight this final series. We saw that in State of Origin. And then the other one was Kalen Ponga. You know, after round 2 at Leichhardt Oval, his career hung in the balance. And he was playing in the front line, and he was heavily concussed again. He didn't return to the game. He was getting paid $1.4 million a year. He was... I wouldn't say the most committed player of all time. And he had that reputation about, hey, Kalen's cool, but unless he's wearing a maroon jersey, if you really want it, you don't get it from him. And then he came back. He said no to Billy Slater for Game 3 of State of Origin. He said yes to the Newcastle Knights. And Adam O'Brien went, oh, thank heavens for that. Put him back to fullback. And his form over the last week he misses out. His form over the last 8 weeks has been irrepressible, but he's got an injury going into this final series. So they're the three guys who are the standouts for me, and the rest of the chapters to be written this month.
I had the exact same three. I thought nobody played at a higher level for me than Ponga in that recent Knights win streak. But then I thought Walsh was that close and did it in 2 Origin wins. And then Johnson for his consistency, and I think would deserve to win the Dally M. How about Coach of the Year? Back to you, Nakul. Who would you give that to?
Yep, I've gone. Obviously, you could have many, and I'm sure you guys will throw out some other names, but I've gone Andrew Webster. I just had a bit of a look at the NRL ladder, had a look at the finals teams, and I looked at that Warriors outfit, and you go, yeah, Fanua Blake, fair enough. He's in career best form. He's a top line front rower. Sean Johnson has shocked everyone, and he's a top line half this year. But you look throughout their team, and there's a lot of like mid-range players that have had to play above and beyond to get there. And you look at the Warriors have made the top 4 this year. That is extremely, extremely impressive when you look at their 17. And there's no way they get there without Webster. And just one last point on him, look at Cam Serraldo. He's gone to another club where there's a lot of the Dogs actually had more big name signings in the last couple of years. And look where they are, So I think that just speaks a lot for Andrew Webster and where he's got the Warriors this year.
Same pick for you, Jimmy, or another?
I've got a different pick. I've got Ivan Cleary. Cool. For Ivan to do it again, 3rd minor premiership in 4 years, and he did it without Andrew Webster, and he did it without Cameron Serraldo. So obviously he has a lot of faith in the other guys that he has around him, and that feels like Ivan's way. He's now made 4 grand finals, and he's won 2 of them. And he's made the last 3 grand finals in a row, and he's won the last 2 premierships in a row. Like, when do we start talking about Ivan Cleary in terms of, so Wayne Bennett, Craig Bellamy, Trent Robinson's won 3. Ivan's been in 4 grand finals and won 2. It might be 3 in a month's time. The other thing he's done, he had this edge back rower, Viliami Kikau, who made Team of the Year for the last 3 years, who was so great from an attack point of view. He was so great from a decoy point of view, and he was a brilliant defensive edge back rower with a point of difference to everyone else. And he had Api Coruscant, who went to the West Tigers and showed everyone how creative and how important he was for that side. And he lost them both, and he didn't really replace them with like for like, and he still won the minor premiership. Ivan Cleary for me.
And I think Jeremy Kerwin in the chat has Johnson for his player, DWZ, AFB, and Webster. So I wonder if we can guess who JK might support. I also went Andrew Webster as well, with doing more with a bit less. But I definitely take the point on Ivan Cleary. Kevy's done an outstanding job. You mentioned their system before, Nakul. I think Bellamy again to get Melbourne top 4, and then of course Adam O'Brien has this Knights team coming home with a wet sail. How about moment of the year then, Nakul? Is one that sticks out to you?
Cool. I'm definitely going to have one that you guys won't say is your highlight. So I've got something different. There's obviously a lot of moments this year, but for me, I haven't been to Suncorp Stadium too many times, and I went there in round 27, bought tickets to the game thinking this is going to be great, shootout for like a top 2 spot or whatever. Turns out it's the 2 reserve grade sides play each other pretty much. But one thing that was special, the first and only time I'd been to Suncorp before that was Pappenhausen's sort of breakout game in 2019. And seeing Pappenhausen take the field that day was special in itself on that big stage. But then him and Fa'alongo combining for that try, to be fair, I was about 10 beers deep and pretty high up in the stands. But the way that try looked, and I didn't know anything about Fa'alongo, but he looked electric. And to see Pappenhausen at his best and then obviously score a try later, that was my sort of, point of difference highlight of the year.
I'm glad you got your money's worth. How about you, Jimmy? Which moment sticks out to you?
So Fa'alongo was a bit like that, 2 years ago when I saw Reece Walsh for the first time, and half a game in, you go, this guy's a first grader. Fa'alongo is exactly the same. Moment of the year, I reckon there was 2, and they both involved Tom Trbojevic at State of Origin level. So when he goes for a concussion with 12 minutes remaining, and New South Wales lead game 1 at the Adelaide Oval, and then Brad Fittler puts Nico Hines out there, and Munster scoots around him, and Hamiso scores the try, and then they get another one to win the game. And then 3 minutes into game 2, he does his peck, and somehow Damien Cook's in the centres, and you don't get the 2 hookers. The Origin series is gone on Tom Trbojevic to two key moments. And there's Anthony Seibold sitting at home watching on the telly, absolutely distraught. So I think they were two huge moments in the season of New South Wales and for Manly.
I like that you went really pivotal. I'm going to go back a bit more personal, and a highlight for me, getting behind the Finns this year. I was also in attendance for the 26-0 comeback against the Titans. That was thrilling, but also just the Dolphins, what they achieved this year was a massive highlight for me. I wanted to just get you guys as well to declare allegiances and biases going in. Jimmy, you played for East, Souths, Wests. Only one of those remains. So is the Tricolours the team that you are supporting in the final series?
Generally play for anyone who would have me in the end. So Roosters. However, I do have an investment on the Melbourne Storm. I think the Melbourne Storm can make the grand final. I've also backed them to win the whole competition. And that's not because I think they're a better chance to win than Penrith, but I think at the price is why I was more interested than Penrith.
And we will talk about those teams in the week one matchups. Nakul, I don't know if I've asked you before. Who do you get behind?
If I had to pick a team, it'd be the Raiders, but I do love the Raiders players. But in this final series, I was going to say the Warriors or the Knights. I think the Warriors are everyone's second favorite team at the moment with what they did for the NRL and obviously doing so well this year. But I'm going to choose the Knights. I will talk about them more in a bit later in the pod, but I think they run into a potential grand final. And if they get there, with the Johns brothers behind them and all the media sort of hype and stuff, and obviously Kalen Ponga on fire, I'm going to be supporting the Knights. And I think, and a couple of my plays, to be fair, are based off them as well. So I've got a couple of reasons to go for them.
Let us know in the comments who you're supporting in the finals, especially if your team's not there. Other highlights, Jeremy Cohen says, Magic Round with the TryPod. We got a massive crew together. I got to meet Jimmy in person that day. Kieran Foran, mighty Kieran Foran's hat trick. That was just last week for Colt. Someone else had when the Eels beat Penrith 13+, and that would have been a juicy payout. That was Ryan there. And Colt also has a special mention when TryPod merch dropped. Okay, let's jump into where we go. We go straight into the matchups. So I'll start with you, Nakul. Whether you've got a try scorer angle you're looking at, or just an observation, what are you seeing in Broncos Storm, where the Broncos are 4.5-point favourites Friday night at Suncorp?
I'm going to get straight into the try scorer stuff, and you guys cover the game. So with that game, I've got Farnworth at left centre, running at Seve, right centre for the Storm. Two reasons. A, he's a good price. He's over $3 on TAB and play up to score a try. But and our model's got him priced at about $2.60. So I love the value there. But also from a matchup point of view, I noticed that a lot of people were making fun of Corey Oates for not scoring a try this year. Who's the centre inside him? It's Farnworth. He doesn't like passing. So I love Farnworth in that anytime try scorer.
And Jimmy, what are you looking forward to most about this matchup?
Can I just tell you, I had the great fortune of playing in England at Salford with Martin Offia. Martin was the second greatest try scorer in the history of English rugby league behind the legendary Brian Bevan. And every year the leading try scorer used to get £10,000. Martin was interested in money a lot, but he was more interested in scoring tries. He would say to his centre, if I win the try scoring competition, I'll give you 5,000. So all the centres just Herbie Farnworth would, I don't know how he'd go with Martin Offia, whether he'd keep passing the ball or not. Look, you can't ignore this hoodoo that the Melbourne Storm have over the Brisbane Broncos. And when I think of this game and when I think of these teams, I think of Walters v Bellamy. So Bellamy's got this incredible ability to break down oppositions and find their strong point. Taumalolo used to run for 300 metres a game and then he stopped him, just getting out at marker quickly and cutting him down straight away. Tom Trbojevic was on fire for Manly, came up against the Melbourne Storm in that semi-final, and they just ran him to the sidelines the whole time. He'll come up with a strategy for Adam Reynolds, and it's probably just as much as cut down his time and send Nelson at him whenever I can. And he'll come up with a strategy for Reece Walsh. Not sure what that is. And not sure I like the balance of his bench there with Garlick and Pappenhausen on that bench, and Tepai Moiroa and Tarek Sims, who were really good last week. They both miss out. I think they might be a big guy short there. But beyond that, this is a really strong Melbourne side. Been there, done that. Hughes back. Pappenhausen's still a little underdone, but it's so exciting to see the flying mullet. They're the things that I think of when I think of this game. It's the Bellamy ability to be very particular about what he does against the opposition. I think might be able to hold off this Broncos side.
And I'll get further thoughts from you guys on these teams because I'm going to ask who you're picking to make the grand final. For what it's worth, I really like Brisbane. Friday night, my best bet's actually Melbourne under 18.5 points. So I think Brisbane will win, but Melbourne could still win, score under 18. It could be that style of game. And the biggest edge for me that I think is decisive is the Brisbane forward pack, particularly the middles. Moving to Saturday, we've got the back-to-back premiers hosting the Warriors, and Penrith are 13.5-point favourites. Nakul, again, got a try scorer for us or another angle for this game?
Yep, I'll dig straight into the try scorers. So something really interesting, again, when you look at ball hogs, Tyrone Peachy at left centre for a few weeks was the butt of a few jokes from fans. He just doesn't pass it. He always goes for it himself. But Taruva, who's the left side winger, he had Stephen Crichton inside of him. And I noticed that last week, and I thought that was quite interesting for the Panthers to swap Tungo and Crichton. So I think with Crichton inside of him, Taruva looks much better. I think he scored 2 tries on the weekend. And up against the Warriors, I reckon the Panthers will do quite well. That Taruva is $2.25. Score a try on better. Love the matchup. Love the fact that Crichton's inside of him now. And also really like the price.
I noted that on our preview pod that I thought without Luai there, they're conscious of having Crichton on the left to make that still such a threat on that side. And Cleary was drifting left side of the ruck as well when they torched the Cowboys. How do you see this one, Jimmy? Do you give the Warriors and the Warriors fans that are in the chat any hope of an almighty upset here?
Is Brian Tottle fully fit, you reckon? He strikes me as a guy who might be doing a little bit on one leg at the moment with that knee heavily bandaged. But it's interesting that those points you made around that. Stephen Crichton's been superb, hasn't he, the last few weeks? I'm worried about the Luai absence because he's such a point of difference to Jack Cogger. And I know Jack Cogger got to the right. Like Nathan Cleary came around to the left, but Jack Cogger got to the right, got himself a try assist there with Liam Martin. So there's no problem with Jack Cogger playing the Nathan Cleary role. Not sure about the Jerome Luai role, but if they play as strongly as they did last week, Penrith, and just suffocate you with a great kicking game and just make you work off your end, I think that's going to be really hard. Again, so we've got this, just like we had Walters and Bellamy, we've got Master and Apprentice with Cleary and Webster. And it's the same with the next game in Fitzgibbon and Robinson, which is really interesting. And there's even a link for Adam O'Brien and Ricky Stewart, which I'll get to. But the thing that concerns me with the Warriors, again, it's about their bench composition. So Mitch Barnett's gone up into the front row. He's probably played more edge, but, can get away with playing in the middle. And then you have a look at their bench, and I'm thinking, no Bunty Afar, who's been so good for them this year. I think Tommy Aile's been really good. And it just gets the sense that he's trying to not fudge his way through, but Dylan Walker, Jazz Tavanga, Bailey Sirinen, edge, Josh Curran, edge. So it's a really interesting bench. Now, he may not go with that bench, Andrew Webster, but I thought that was the thing. I thought, James Fisher-Harris and Moses Leota and Spencer Leniu and Lindsay Smith are there saying, hey, this is where I think we can build an advantage. And, that's their game. Wear you down and then kick you into corners and then strangle you. So they're a hope, but I think the market's exactly right on this.
Yeah, I think, as I said in our preview, that New Zealand have got the toughness to not get pushed around. And I love the angle you made there of Master versus Apprentice and the segue into the next game. And I made the point that Webster, being the attack coach for Penrith, if anyone can come up with a game plan, maybe they can limit the Panthers. I guess on the bench, like Tavanga, Curran, Walker could all spend time in the middle. So they'd be going for more mobility. But you raise a good point there, whether they've got kind of the muscle to match what Penrith brings to the table. Let's move to Saturday night, where it's a pick'em, Sharks, Roosters, your former side. Jimmy, I'll give you the first word. How do you see this matchup? Probably the tightest of the weekend.
Yeah, I think there's more talent in the Roosters side. I look at that and I think more talent, more big game experience, coming good at the right time of the year as well too. I think that's important. The Sharks went up to Newcastle and were well and truly outclassed, and then they struggled. Well, they only got home really on the back of a 12-man Canberra side at home. So, say what you like about playing at PointsBet. Personally, I think it's ridiculous. But anyway, separate issue. Again, we've got master and apprentice with Robinson and Fitzgibbon. I'm concerned for the Sharks with their fullback and the fitness around Connor Tracy. And then you've got, if he's not right, you've got to bring Will Kennedy in, who hasn't played for 5 weeks. So that's a bit of a concern. I know Manu's a question mark as well, but I think it's almost the point where Robinson goes, well, let's roll the dice on it. And if they do roll the dice on it, I know Jared Hargreaves is not there, but man for man, I think I like the Roosters side. And Sam Walker's come back into it and just offering that point of difference. You know, Keary can still, you know, he can get you to points on a field, and Sammy will do something completely different. And when you've got Swalihi and when you've got Tedesco there, I think they can capitalise on that. I think this is the market is wrong, and I think the Roosters will win.
Well, it's tight for me. I actually disagree with you, and I've actually leaned to the Sharks, but I definitely take all the points you make there about why the Roosters can extend their 5-game winning streak. How do you see this one, Nicole? And you can split the vote.
Yeah, look, I'll try to not put my 2 cents in terms of the result. I reckon it's so close. I won't talk about the matchups and stuff in detail. The one thing I will say, the only thing that I can think of to separate these two teams is the Roosters are missing Daniel Tupou and Warrior Hargreaves. That's 2, long-term, like really impressive players for the Roosters, and they've just had to fight so hard just to get here. Whereas the Sharks have had a really, like Hines has admitted, he's had a few down weeks, and they've kind of just come back from that. So I can't split them, but if I had to say where I'd lean, it'd be the Sharks, just because of Tupou and Hargreaves. I reckon if them two are playing, I'd tip the Roosters, but this isn't my specialty. I'll get to my specialty, the try scorer stuff. Joey Manu, right centre. Look, yes, he's under an injury cloud, but the assumption is 100% fit, ready to go if he's going to play. If he does play, he gets to run at Talakai and Mulatalo, the Sharks left edge. I know they've had a lot of troubles this year, but a lot of that was with Moylan and Wilton there as well. I'm assuming with Manu back, with Sammy Walker on that edge, that right side of the Roosters, love Manu to score a try. It's $3.25 on BetR, so a decent price. And there's not that many ways you could separate these two teams, but the right side of the Roosters running at that left edge of the Sharks that everyone knows is their weaker edge is probably my my sort of opinion on this game in terms of try scorers.
Let us know who you're picking in the comments. Nakul couldn't split us, so he's pretty much predicting extra time like it was in week 1 of the finals at Shark Park a year ago, perhaps. Move to Sunday. I think it'll be easier to pick the winner in this one. I'll go straight back to you, Nakul, because it's probably another great game to pick a try scorer or two.
Hell yeah. So look, as I said, if I had to pick a team, I do love the Raiders. I would love to support them on this day, but it's not going to happen. They've, a couple of my favorite players, Josh Papali'i is one of them. They're also missing Corey Hurlsberg. And I think the real killer for me is Whiten at center, Frawley at left half, them two defending. Oh man, I can't stop laughing. Like them two defending next to each other. As much as I love the Raiders, it's like that's up against Gagai and Frizzell on the right edge for the Knights. I think it's just going to be too hard. And honestly, as sad as it makes me to say it, I reckon the Knights could really dominate this one. From a try scorer perspective, Gagai, he's our model's favorite pick all weekend for a value pick. Is $3.40 on Neds. And I got to say, from a matchup point of view, he's running up at Frawley and Whiten. Like, there's no way you can talk me out of that one. Our model's actually priced him at $2.55. So the $3.40 is probably my bet of the week on Dane Gagai to score a try anytime.
And how do you see this one, Jimmy?
What's Dom Young then? Exactly. So the link is that when the Raiders had the great teams of the early 90s, they used to go down to Bateman's Bay to the pub. And the pub was owned by Adam O'Brien's dad. So a young Adam O'Brien used to be running around as a 10, 12-year-old getting the autographs of all these great Raiders players. So knows Ricky Stewart very well. So my concern is Ponga's health. So the moment that he was injured, the speculation around for 24 hours was he's gone for the year. It's collarbone, it's shoulder. There's real concerns around it. And essentially it all went quiet and the Knights didn't tell us anything and I didn't expect them to tell. I don't anticipate them telling us anything, but that's my concern. So he gets out there and he plays and he doesn't quite play as well as what we talked about, right? Which was this incredible 8-week run that he was on. And everything came off the back of him. I know they had a lot of other good players, but it was, that game against the Sharks, they were struggling at 6-6 into that second half. And then Ponga does that kick return where he runs 60 metres and he beat 4, and it just went bang. They just kicked into gear on the back of that. So he's vital. I think Hastings is nearly as vital about getting them around the park. He'll be able to get help Tyson Gamble on that right-hand side as well and create those things that you think are going to happen, Nakul. And I totally agree with you. No Horsburgh, no Papali'i, no Seb Chris, and all that happens. So you've got Albert Hopewadi, who has been excellent at different stages through the course of this year, and Jared Croker, and they're there and they're not being used at all. So James Schiller comes in. It's like, wow. It's Newcastle, and my little asterisk is I just hope Kalen Ponga is fit.
Yeah.
Well, I speculated that the bold move would be to leave Ponga on ice one more week and trust that the home advantage and the rest of the troops should still be able to get the job done. And then he would come with you. We don't know for sure the matchups, but a likely trip to New Zealand beckons for the Knights, where you definitely need a fully fit Kalen Ponga. You can't probably risk doing that. But seriously, depending on the severity of the injury, that could actually be wise. I guess we can talk a little bit more about the Knights if you want to go in that direction, gents. I'll throw it to you first, Nakul. We know that it's so hard to make noise in the finals if you don't finish in the top 4, but are the sides from 5th to 8th just making up the numbers? Or I didn't even want to ask, like, can a team from outside the 4 win the comp or make a grand final? Because you're probably going to pick sides from in the 4. But of these sides, Knights, Roosters, Sharks, Raiders, which of them could you see getting to a prelim? Could you see any of them winning week 1 and 2, Nakul?
Yep. So I'll just I had a couple of notes on the path to the grand final, and I'll start off with like if the Knights can get the job done against the Raiders, they'd go on to play the Warriors. As I've said before, the Knights are on this crazy run. They've got Ponga, who's absolutely electric, and the Warriors. If you kind of look past their performance, which has been excellent this year, when you really just look at their team, on paper, I can see the Knights taking on the Warriors and even beating them, right? And then I think what happens next? Well, what likely happens next is a prelim final against, say, Brisbane or Melbourne at their home ground. And again, if I think of the Knights playing either of those teams, I'm getting a little bit carried away here, but I think that's much better than playing Penrith, right? So I think in terms of the path to the grand final, if someone's going to do it, I'd say the Knights going Raiders, Warriors, and then, well, yeah, it's really difficult, but Storm or Brisbane. Like I think I can at least envision that. Whereas with the Raiders and with the Sharks and the Roosters, they'd have to beat the Panthers in a prelim to make the grand final most likely, which is going to be extremely difficult.
For what it's worth, the odds on the screen are to win the Premiership. So these are the longer shots. Jimmy, do you feel the same way, or how about your former team?
No, I can't. I think the Knights outside of the top 4 are definitely the team that can go for a run for all of those things that Nakul said. But I'm going to pull you up at the prelim, and that is because what we're going to have out of this game is someone from Newcastle win against the Raiders, and someone picks up an injury, and then you're going to go to another tough game, and they're going to play the loser. So let's say it's the Warriors, and then they're going to get another injury, and then they're going to have to fly back. And I'm making a presumption that the Storm beat the Broncos. Then they're going to go up to Brisbane to take on Brisbane. The Storm, they got over. Yeah. So the Storm's been waiting for 2 weeks to play at home against the side that's busted and been on the road. It's a great and their best player is busted. It feels right. It sounds right. When you start breaking it down like that, I'm like, that's not going to happen. So even if it's Brisbane, even if it's Brisbane that they take on, they're fresh and they're at home. It's too hard. So no grand final fairy tale for the Knights, but they are the most likely, but they won't.
I mean, the Knights beat the Storm comfortably a few weeks ago, and the Knights had Brisbane beaten at Suncorp weeks before that, before Brisbane got home late. But I completely agree, Jimmy. That's a regular season game. This is very different when one side, the home side, would have 14-day prep. That's why it's so hard to pull an upset. It's so hard to go the long way around the mountain in the finals. It is tough. We're making assumptions about matchups. If there's a top 4 upset in the first week of the finals, it's going to throw everything on its head. But, I mean, the Panthers and Knights are both about $1.20 to win. So it is pretty likely that we do get Warriors, Knights, week 2 of the finals in Auckland. And I think it would be a close to pick 'em. I couldn't really imagine the Warriors being an underdog at home. But if you're telling me the Knights are going to go in there on a 10-game winning streak, then a lot of people would be backing them. So that's a bit presumptuous of us, but we'll get a chance to preview that next week if it does transpire. I want to ask you guys who you think will make the grand final then, but why don't we just get a clip before grand final predictions? Let's get some angles and in terms of the markets and hear about the moves from our show sponsor. He's going to touch on betting in the markets that we're covering next, as well as some of the other smorgasbord of sports that we've got coming up in September.
G'day everyone, Tristan Merlihan from Top Sport. Just having a look at the final series that we've got kicking off this weekend, where the futures are an interesting look. The Panthers are firm favourites. They've been that way for most of the year. We'd probably be one of the only bookies with a black number next to Penrith at the moment. It's not massive, but they're certainly not losers, which is very, very surprising considering the way they've been up the top of that market most of the time, and they've just had a sustained run of brilliant form. I suspect we will lay them over the next 3 or 4 weeks. It was one of those things I think some of the big pundits either stepped in earlier or they were happy to wait until they got to the finals because they knew the market couldn't have shifted too much. So Brisbane, they were our biggest backed runner at the start of the year. They were $21 in. They're into $3.10. They're our worst way at the moment. Well, equal worst way with the Roosters. I thought we'd banked that money many, many weeks ago, but now they've snuck into the finals and you never know, they could make a bit of a run. They were the best backed team all pre-season. They were the $6 equal favourites at the start of the season. So they're still a losing result for us, despite the fact they've been pretty ordinary for a good chunk of the year, but they've had that big winning run to get themselves into the final. And you never know. Stranger things have happened. We've obviously got the NFL starting on Friday. We've got a whole heap of custom markets up on the website. You can jump on there, see if there's anything that takes your fancy. We've got the World Cup. We were betting on all the markets for the World Cup. We've also got the AFL finals, so have a look at that. Jacob's actually cooked up a special finals multi as well, where he was pretty damaging when the World Cups were on last time. So I'll let him talk about that, but a little bit nervous about that one. He obviously got us last time, and I think there's a little bit of value around it. So good luck, everyone, if you're having a wager on over the footy finals, and hopefully we have a cracking month of footy.
Thanks to Tristan. I have got a doozy of a combination market to share. Later, we did an NFL season preview pod on Monday that kicks off Friday. Tristan mentioned a World Cup. Which World Cup's he talking about? We've got Basketball World Cup on right now, but Rugby World Cup on Saturday morning, Aussie time as well. So it's all happening. We're here because of the Rugby League. Let's get back to that. And I just want to press you, gentlemen, for your grand finalists prediction in terms of most likely grand final in your eyes. Nakul, who's it going to be?
Yeah, look, I've just got to go Broncos, Panthers. I can't offer anything too exciting. I think the point Jimmy made around arrested prelim finalists, I think this year is going to be huge. If Luai is to make it, he's aiming for the prelim. We don't know whether he will or not, but if he does, and the Panthers do have a week off, they're playing at home in a prelim final in Sydney, potentially Luai back, well rested, you just can't back against them. And the Broncos will likely play. Well, it doesn't matter who they play. If they're playing at Suncorp with a week's break, it's hard to back against them as well. So that's all I can really offer. Unfortunately, nothing exciting for me.
And that shows the importance of this weekend, doesn't it, Jimmy? Because you're probably going to say the 2 top 4 teams that win this weekend will meet in the big dance in October.
Yeah, so I'd say the value there is the Melbourne Storm, right? I totally agree, read the Panthers. Panthers will win this week and then they'll win the following in a fortnight's time because Jerome Luai will be back and they'll be playing at a core stadium and, they'll be playing a side that's busted along the way, right? And I heard Cam Smith talking today and, he was asked, hey, would you take the break? And he said, every single time you take that break in the finals. So the winner of Friday night, the winner of this game tomorrow night, the Storm and the Broncos, makes the grand final in my mind because they'll play that other side. They'll be flip over to the weaker side of the draw where it's Knights or Warriors, we think, or Raiders, right? So I think the Storm can win on Friday night. Therefore, the $2.75 to make the grand final against the Penrith Panthers is where I would be going.
Next up, we're going to do a bit of player markets as well. Now, this gets more interesting too, because it's not always going to be who lasts longest, because if you play in week 2 of the finals, you might get a chance to accumulate more points. So Nathan Cleary, however, is the 290 favourite in this market, followed by Adam Reynolds, 380. Nakul, did you do a bit of research into this one? Got any kind of angles or value play in this market?
Yeah, definitely do. So I think what Jimmy's saying in terms, or what we're all saying in terms of like, the top 4 team, you win week 1, you get a rest, etc. Right? What's interesting about these markets though is that doesn't really matter. Like the Panthers might go bang, 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 play 3 games, win the grand final, but they're still only playing 3 games, right? Whereas in Knights, I'm hoping you're wrong, Jimmy, and I'm hoping Pong is perfectly fine and he nails it on Sunday. If he does do that and the Knights can go on a bit of a run, yes, we agree that they're unlikely to win a prelim and unlikely to win a grand final. But we also think they are the team that if Ponga is fit, that could make the prelim final, right? And if they do make the prelim final, they get 3 games, the same as the Panthers in all likelihood. And the most important thing is they get week 1 up against a banged up Raiders side. So you got Dom Young and Marju. I'll pull up the stats some other time, maybe in a post or something, Jacob. But both of them, we know they can score 2 or 3 tries in a game, and it's not a big shock. We know that the Raiders have fought really hard the last couple of weeks, but they're just too banged up. They're missing too many key players. And I reckon there's a pretty decent shot here of a Dom Young or a Marju scoring a double or maybe even a hat trick in week 1. And if they can get to that 3rd game, they can easily score a couple more tries. So I think the values around there. I think Young and Marju are both around that $20 mark to score the most tries in the finals on 365. And I know Ponga is around $8 or $9 on most bookies to score the most tries in the finals. That'd be like my value sort of fun punts to follow the Knights along into the finals.
So you jumped ahead as well to top try scorer, but similar line of thinking. And I have tipped the Knights. I've tipped the second half line, which is -6 as my best bet on Sunday Arvo, because I could definitely see a scenario where the Knights just blow the Raiders away. So I think you make a great point there. Penrith could win it all and play an arm wrestle against New Zealand and then have to beat, let's say, a Brisbane or a Storm in a prelim, which still might not be high scoring. And then, of course, the grand final, which is rarely high scoring. The Knights could put 40 or 50 on this weekend, and Ponga could get a nice lead. And it's even a scenario where you could be the top point scorer or top try scorer and only play 2 games in the final series compared to others that play 3. Any angles here, Jimmy, for yourself, points or top try scorer?
I like the rationale around Dom Young, so I think that's very solid. My top point scorer would be Adam Reynolds. So I think Adam Reynolds is going to play on Friday night. I think he's going to play the following week too, and he'll play the winner of the Roosters and the Sharks. And I'm then presuming that they're going to win that game and they'll then have to go and play the Panthers, which, by the way, the Broncos have beaten the Panthers already at Penrith this year, albeit it was round 1 and there's a lot of water under the bridge from that point. But them winning that game, that'd be an interesting market if you had to frame it up now, what that market would be. But Adam Reynolds, I think he's going to get 3 games, might even get a 4th game. So he'd be my top point scorer.
You're talking about the market if Brisbane played Penrith in a prelim, and if Penrith was rested, I'd have to believe Penrith's still like $1.30 because of that advantage. I mean, Penrith are paying $1.50 to make the grand final, and they're going to have to win twice to get there, and they're $1.20 this week. So if you kind of look at it that way, of course, they could lose and still make the grand final as they did in 2021. But yeah, Penrith will be very short against anyone. Now, if Penrith met Brisbane in a grand final where there was no rest disparity and it's, I guess it's not a neutral venue because it's Sydney, then I do think it's more like Penrith $1.50, Brisbane $2.50. It's a little bit closer together, but we've discussed like that's such a big advantage you get if you're resting in week 2 and the other side is playing do or die. Where are we going next? I think. Oh, okay. I'm going to just share my combo market. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this one. So NRL finals this weekend, as we know. AFL finals actually start 24 hours from now, and then the Rugby World Cup starts just 12 hours after the NRL finals on Saturday morning. So I've combined these 3. Remember last year we did World Cup combo, and we had England to make a final, well, they won the cricket. Australia to win a World Cup, we won the league, and a South American team to win a World Cup, and Argentina won the soccer. So we're combining some teams by location. So I've got Brisbane for 4+ wins. That's, of course, the Broncos and the Lions. We get there if they both make a grand final, or maybe Broncos or Lions win. The other would just have to get to a prelim. I've got a New Zealand team making a grand final. Now, that could be the Fairy Tale Wars. It could also be the All Blacks. And then I've got both teams named Melbourne, that is the D's and the Storm, to just make the prelims. Keep in mind, they've both finished top 4, so they've got 2 chances to make the prelims. It's $8 all up. You can up to 50 on that on Top Sport. And our promo code is TP Live. Jimmy, you're across a bunch of sports. So have you got any observations or tips for us for the AFL or the Rugby World Cup?
AFL, not so much. I don't follow that so closely, but it depends on the health of Dacos, right? Whether Collingwood would be able to get that win, although Max Gawn and Melbourne seem to be able to, they're big game players, aren't they? As far as the Rugby World Cup, Wallabies to make the semi-finals, which a lot of people are, no wins from 5 matches with Eddie Jones. They've got a really good draw. They'll probably get England if things go to plan in a quarterfinal, and England are really struggling at the moment. So Wallabies into a semi-final. And yeah, beyond that, that's Australia into a semi-final in the Cricket World Cup. Do we want to put that on the table as well?
That's right. There's actually so much sport. Yeah, Nakul, you probably got an observation there.
Yeah, I was literally just going to say, so the Cricket World Cup kicks off around the 10th of October, I believe. It's in India, and obviously Australia is one of the top sort of 3 or 4 teams. And it's funny with one-dayers because they don't play that many 50-over games anymore. So it's really about the quality of the cricketers because they don't have a lot of time to gel as a team. So I reckon Australia's got a pretty good crack in that as well. So it's going to be really exciting sort of next couple of months for Aussie sport.
Can I just – is Jeremy Kerwin, is he a Kiwi? He's just said the Wallabies won't make it out of pool play. Get out of town, JK.
Look, I don't know his nationality. All I know is his favourite moment was DWZ. His favourite player was Sean Johnson. His favourite coach was Andrew Webster. And he did comment up the Wars several times earlier. I like your point about the draw in the Rugby World Cup. People might not realise that 4 highest-ranked nations in the world are all combined in 2 pools, and those 2 pools overlap in the quarterfinals. So that is France, Ireland, New Zealand, and South Africa. Australia avoids all those teams on their side of the draw until a grand final. So I'll actually like your tip there as well, Jimmy. Even though people might not rate the Wallabies, the pathway is there. And then once you're in tournament play, anything can happen, just like it can in the Rugby League, and that's where we'll finish. We've all shared our grand final. Well, for what it's worth, I'm with Nakul. I'll go Broncos Panthers. So just give me who you think takes it out, and your number one reason why this team wins it all. Nakul.
I'm going to go the Broncos. If the Panthers had Jerome Luai and they had no injury concerns, I would have had to say the Panthers. Because of that injury concern, I just think that the Broncos have the momentum. They've got a good mix of youth, talent, and a little bit of experience. They're hungry. I think the Panthers are excellent. And if Jerome Luai doesn't come back, I'll feel confident thinking, if the Broncos play the Panthers, this is going to be an exciting game and they can get an upset in the grand final. If Luai is back, it's extremely close for me. But I'm going to say Broncos at the moment.
Jimmy, what odds did you jump on the Storm at? I'm interested. And they might represent the best value. If you're going to pick a 3-peat, what gets Penrith over the line?
Yeah, so I got them at $6 to win the comp and $2.90 to make the grand final. So they're into $2.75 now, I think. So if we assume the knowledge that we have is that Luai will be back for a grand final, so he'll play in a prelim, then I think we have to look at it from that point of view. And you've got the steady hand of Cleary and Edwards up against the brilliance of, steady hand of Reynolds, but brilliance of Ezra Mam and Reece Walsh. I think middle forwards sort of counter each other. They don't have the most creative hookers. That's Melbourne with Harry Grant. Look, if all prices were the same, then it's the Penrith Panthers. They've just been amazing what they've been able to do. But I see value in the Melbourne Storm, and this game this week, tomorrow, Friday is absolutely vital. They win that, they got 1 foot in the grand final in my mind.
And you talked before about how Ivan doesn't get discussed in a historical context, but if you win 3 competitions in a row, we gone back to the 80s. Did the Eels before my time, right? But this is in the modern era. This is unprecedented, and Penrith have a massive opportunity to do so.
So since the Eels won it in 81, 82, 83, the Bulldogs had a go at it 84, 85, the Broncos 92, 93, the Raiders 89, 90, and then the Roosters 18, 19. Have a look at who the coaches are of those sides. Warren Ryan, the Bulldogs, Tim Sheens, Wayne Bennett, Trent Robinson, and the coach who did it was Jack Gibson, who was the coach of the century. So if Ivan's able to do it, we've got to change the narrative around Ivan Cleary.
That's some pretty good company. And I've had great company tonight, guys. I really appreciate you making the time, and thank you for being available for our audience, sharing all these insights ahead of what's going to be such a blockbuster NRL final series. We said before, you can catch Jimmy on SEN daily, 12 till 3, as well as the Market Watch podcast. And Nakul, you can find all his insights, including a punter's preview, via Wicky. The Wicky website, I've actually got the link in this episode description. Thank you to everyone who tuned in tonight. Again, check out those custom markets. They're available on Top Sport under Rugby League. Thank you so much for tonight, gentlemen. Enjoy the finals.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jacob. See you, Nicole.